Gina Mollicone-Long. It is so great to see you. Welcome back to Paper Napkin Wisdom.
Thank you for having me. It's been a very long time, I'd say.
It has been a bit. It has been a minute.
It has
And
been.
it has been a minute. For those of you who are listening, and it was in the intro, it will
Yeah.
definitely be in the intro, but Gina's been on Paper Napkin for a long time. And by the way, forced me to be in Paper Napkin, well, like to really get this off the ground when we were having a glass of wine at a really great place downtown called Play in Ottawa, and she was here speaking to an entrepreneurs organization group at the time, and we went out afterward, and as we were talking, encouraged me to take this plan that I had for Paper Napkin Wisdom and not wait and make it happen.
And,
So
and I think I legit wrote the napkin, like legit at that place.
right there,
Like,
right
like,
then and
like
there.
actually got the bar napkin in the
Yeah,
place. Like,
that's exactly when it happened and how it happened. So
mm-hmm,
there was a bar
mm-hmm.
napkin, and you were my first live paper napkin. We just didn't record it, and then we did later.
That's right.
So
I think I wrote this diagram that's behind me on the blackboard, if I
that is
recall.
exactly what
Yeah,
you did.
yeah, yeah.
So if everybody wants to look back, it's episode number 1 and 2. We're now at 200 plus. So episode number 1 and 2, go back and check it out. So Gina, welcome back.
Thank you.
It's thrilling to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks
Um,
for having me. Honestly, it's an honor.
it really, really is my pleasure and my honor. So you gave me a great napkin, and so for full disclosure for everybody here, Gina has always had this way, and she has this way with a lot of people, but she has a special spot in my heart. She has this way of talking to me in a way that really hits me. It feels like every bit of her learning and messaging comes right down to me. Always, it's always felt very personal. So I adore her for this, and so I'm always
Not
vaguely
everybody does.
intimidated. Yeah, yeah. I'm always vaguely intimidated a little bit before we get started because I know I'm going to learn a lot, and it makes me uncomfortable before we learn a lot. But I know that I'm going to learn a lot, and I appreciate that about you, Gina, a lot.
Thank you.
I adore it about you, actually, because you give so openly. So why, and I say this sheepishly, become the person that you are before you have the proof. Why did you share that with me?
Because I honestly, macro level, I think a lot of people are waiting for some sort of proof that they're great before they go out there and actually just be great. Like, I think everybody overcomplicates the issue. I'll say something like, hey, my why is to reveal greatness. For me, it's so succinct. It's so obvious to me because what it implies, we say in NLP, the presupposition, is the greatness is already there, right? So when I came up with reveal greatness, and I worked really hard to come up with those words, and I didn't come up with them, just to be clear, someone else helped me come up with them. When that happened, I was like, oh, it's perfect because it captures certain meanings, right? Like, I'm not doing it, you're doing it. I'm not making you great, you're already great. There's nothing missing. And so when I say become the person that you are before you have the proof, it's sort of like you're already great. So just be it. Then the proof that you're great will show up because you can't have the proof till you be it.
Yeah. So it's like one of my favorite stories that you like to tell is the baby walking, right? Like a baby doesn't know that it can walk until it walks, and no one tells it that it can walk. It just knows that it's ready and it does it.
Mm-hmm.
And is that the same kind of idea here?
Well, it's sort of like so if we use that story and map it into this conversation, so human beings are born with the expectation or the ability to walk unless there's neurological damage. I just want to be clear because not everybody can, right? But that's because something has been damaged. Something in the nervous system has been damaged. So that's a clue, right? If the nervous system is functioning normally, then when a human baby is born, it cannot walk. But it's not like a miracle when a baby walks because that's the expectation, right? I mean, horses are born and they start walking, but humans don't. Okay. So it's not it just is. You just are going to walk. Now, it doesn't mean you walk when you're born. And even if, and I always, when I tell this story, and I just told it recently in Australia, shocking. It, one of the guys, was a really positive thinker. And I said, like, even if you had this guy as your dad, and he was like super positive and a real go-getter and did lots of personal development, was always growing, pushing himself, pushing, positive, no matter what, nothing can knock him down. This is the kind of person that he was. If he was your dad and he was like, I think you can do it, baby, on the day that you're born, the likelihood that that baby's going to walk is next to zero. Not impossible, because as a pure quantum physicist, I would say all realities are possible, but not all realities are probable, right? So no amount of positive thinking and affirmations and all the things that are important to do, no amount of that is going to make that baby walk when it's not ready. So yeah, just to make my point, once there's development that occurs, and it's neurological. So if the nervous system is functioning normally, it takes time from the birth to this point. There's things that have to develop, muscle and balance and coordination and whatever. And so as those things get ticked off the boxes, eventually that baby can learn to walk. Okay. So on that day, you probably see your kid pull themselves up on the chair or whatever, but they can't walk. If you take the chair away, take your hands away, they're just going to fall. So they're ready. So what I like to say is you have the components required to produce the pattern we call walking. Okay. But you don't, like, you have the components for the program walking, but you don't have the sequence yet. So that's the trial and error component the baby goes through until it eventually takes its first, 2-3 steps unassisted. And all that is point C on this chart behind me. Point C happens in an instant. 1 minute you're not doing it, the next minute you're doing it. So technically that's the change, by the way. And this is how long change takes. Then once the baby takes its first 3 steps, just because it's taken 3 steps, you don't like put it on the busiest corner in your town or, sign it up for race walking at the Olympics. Now there's a period of mastery that has to occur. And mastery occurs when you no longer have to think about it. So, and it's mastery because under pressure, it's your go-to program. So that's how it's a dominant program, because you do it under pressure. So become the person that you are before you have the proof is like, look, human babies are born and we know they're going to walk. We're walkers. We walk up, like Homo sapiens walk upright. You know what I'm saying? So that's who we are, but we have to start acting like a walker before we have the proof we can walk. We have to start pulling ourselves up and taking steps and falling down and right? And eventually, if you do that, then eventually, if you're going through hell, right? Churchill says, keep going. Eventually you will find the sequence. Now, the reason why it takes babies so long to learn to walk, quite frankly, there are no good baby walking coaches. Right? Because what I always say to people is if you're between point B and point C, where you don't have the sequence yet, you have the components, you have the components because you have the desire. So you're ready to go, but you don't know how to do the pattern yet. You don't have a program for it yet. Then, if we're talking to business people, I would say get a coach, because they already have the pattern and all you have to do is learn the pattern. And once you learn the pattern, you'll have the pattern. That's why change. So I'm a coach, right? I work with not many. I'd love to work with more people, but I'm spending a lot of time teaching and writing and blah, blah, blah. But the clients I do work with, where I'm curating that point C, right? That's what happens in the office. If you go to a coach like me that does breakthroughs, or somebody that's coaching in that capacity, trying to get you over some sort of hurdle or obstacle, they're just getting you through point C. And everybody thinks that's what coaching is. It is, and it feels amazing. But that's just the beginning, because then what you have is the sequence, but then the sequence needs to become dominant. So most coaches don't know that. So they don't realize C to D is just as important as point C. And so if you are that's why I always say, if we had baby walking coaches that really knew how to install neural networks in babies, we could teach babies how to walk overnight. But we have no idea how to do it. Can you imagine? And if you're a parent out there and you're listening to this, I'd like you to imagine like lying on the floor and being like, okay, use your core, right? Like I don't even know. Like I tried to break it down once because that's what we do in NLP. We try to suspend the process. So I tried to break it down once to see if it could be coached because I'm always intrigued with neural change. And this is like the ultimate. I have no idea what's going on when we walk. Like think of it, like we don't think about it, but where you start to notice that it's a dominant pattern is if you say you have an injury, right? So when I was a varsity athlete, when I went to University of Toronto 8 million years ago, I sprained my ankle badly and I was on crutches and I couldn't even put my toe down. It was like non-functioning leg. And so I couldn't even put my own pants on because it was the leg I stood on. You know what I mean? And then when I finally rehabbed it and I could walk on it, I really, really, really had to make this process, which I'd been doing for almost 20 years at that point, maybe 19 years, right? I had to make it conscious again so that I wouldn't put the injury into the pattern. There's this pattern of walking, right? Now I've got this injury. And my physiotherapist used to say, okay, Gina, until you can go heel toe, I don't want you walking on that foot. Because if you start walking on the foot, but you're tapping on on the pad of your foot, but not putting your heel down because of the injury, eventually you're going to shorten the Achilles tendon and blah, 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 and then you're going to have this weird gait because you didn't. So there was this point where I was like, I'm a varsity athlete and I'm walking like this, like, and it hurt a bit, but that's what the physio is for. And so, but because I did that, now when I walk, I don't have that injury woven into my walking pattern. Okay, walking pattern.
So there's a lot there, right? And I want to go back to where we started because I think it's really important. You talk about a program versus a sequence, right? So we have the program.
We have the components. We have
the components. So we have the components, but we haven't put them in the right sequence yet.
Right.
And so the napkin has become the person that you are before you have the proof is one of the problems or one of the challenges that we face is that sometimes before we figured out the sequence and before we've put it all together, we get an injury. So we've never even had the right sequence. Is that something?
There's a component of that, but if we're using this as the teaching point, right? So we're using this diagram here behind me as the teaching point, then the desire to change comes when you already have all the components you need. So you never want something you're not ready for, just so we're clear, because a baby doesn't want to learn to walk when it's born. It's just lying there. It's a blob, right? So the desire. So if you have a desire for something, it means defunct. You have the components. You're ready. The checklist is checked. You have your ducks. They're just not in a row. Okay. So you have the components, but you do not have the sequence. Okay. The sequence is the program. You don't know which order the things need to go in. You don't know the steps. You haven't performed the output. I'm trying to talk in machine language here because that's how I like to look at it. And people get machine language. So all you have are the components right now. Okay. You have no proof that this is what you can do. But what I am telling you is you have everything you need. The only thing you don't have is the sequence. So the only thing you don't have is point C. You haven't done it yet. The proof is in point C to point D. So you can't get the proof till you do it.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the big catch-22 because in between B and C, you have the sequence, you have the components, but you do not have the sequence. You don't have the program. You don't have the proof. So you have a lot of trial and error, and that is pain for people. People don't like pain because it hurts. So they're in a catch-22 because they have this burning desire, but they don't have the sequence. And so this period between B and C can take a really, really long time because you're in it until you get it. Sometimes people try to quit it. They try to go back to the way it was. They go, oh no, I changed my mind. The problem is you can never unwant something that you have the components for. You cannot get it. You can spend your entire life and never achieve it. Absolutely. That's a really fulfilling way to live. And then the only other way is to just stick with it until you get it. Now, there are ways you can speed this up because, and I want to be clear, this is why I'm saying become the person that you are before you have the proof. You don't need anything. Greatness is in you. It's your birthright. It's there. You just need to get in touch with it. Have at it, period. That's not how people live. So there are shortcuts. Shortcuts include coaches, books, seminars, anybody who's ever done it before, interviews, stuff like your podcast, give people access to information of stuff they've never done before in the hopes that it'll shortcut something for them, right? So if you were going to climb Mount Everest, you'd buy all the components, you'd buy all the gear and do the training and blah, 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 and do all your research, and you'd have all the components, you'd be ready to go, but you wouldn't be up the mountain yet. Now you can climb that mountain. You can just go and climb it. No one's going to stop you. And you might make it, but you'd probably be more successful if you found someone like a Sherpa or someone who's done it before and knows the path, knows the optimal conditions, has a point C, has a program that works. Mm-hmm. You hire them or whatever, work with them, and they take you their way. Then you learn it. Okay, so imagine, let's use the Mount Everest example. Imagine if you do this and you hire someone and they're the greatest one ever and you go with them and you successfully get to the top and down. You've done it once, good for you. But does that make you a master of that? No. So now you've got to do it again and again, again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again. And eventually you'll be a master and then you'll be the person people hire.
And is this like so I love how on the visual, you've underlined mastery. And I think this is the second point, having the pieces versus having the sequence, right? Having the components versus having the sequence.
Right.
And then mastery is when the sequence becomes dominant and under pressure, you go to it.
Yep.
And I think that if I'm being honest about myself, I don't always go to that new state of being under pressure. And that is where I fall down.
It's where everybody falls down.
And it's because it's under pressure.
I teach personal development courses. Okay. Now, and I coach people in an office setting. And everybody thinks that it's all about point C. And point C is amazing. I often thought I would write a book called Point C, right? Because point C is like, yeah, finally, I've been working on this thing forever and you get it, right? It's like you pass your driving test or whatever the thing is, right? Now, how many people listening to this want to get into a car with a 16-year-old that just passed their driving test? But they did it. And as long as they learn to drive correctly, i.e. driver's ed or something, then as long as they practice those skills, which is why I'm a bit of a fan of graduated licensing, as long as they practice those skills, then we see that they can perform them under pressure, right? So everybody thinks point C is like people hire coaches, they get through point C and then they don't work with their coach anymore. People go to one, I see this all the time. They come to our flagship, they like let go of some negative emotions or crap. And they're like, they feel good, right? It's like, yeah. But see, when you work with me, I have more control over the process. And a lot of the value of my work comes from what I do after point C. So anybody who's ever worked with me privately, and they're a select group of people, but they all share one thing in common. When they go to pick up the phone after a breakthrough, they're like, oh boy, have I done all my tasking? Because the tasking is what's created to make the pattern, the now achieved pattern, dominant. So I give, and the tasking isn't literal. Some of it's like really obscure, but that's where I guess I'm gifted. So the tasking is designed to require them to perform the newly acquired behavior under pressure until it doesn't faze them. Right.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I teach people what to do, which is focus on what you want, because that's where we're falling off all over the place. So they'll always tell you, because they can call me anytime, but it's not all unicorns and roses when they call. So they're like, have I focused on what I want? Yeah, I've been using the emotional guidance system. Have I done all my tasks? No. They don't call me because they know they've got to do their tasks. Because if they're not doing their tasks and they call me and they say, I'm struggling with my goal, like with keeping my goal here, it's because they haven't been doing their tasks. It's not dominant. Something happened, knocked them off center. Now it's not dominant. So it's like a self-correcting system, which is how I've designed it. Because I get results 100% of the time. I'm not interested in not getting results.
And for people not listening here, Gina comes at this from actually an engineering background, and you saw maybe the ring when she flashed it up that she's an engineer. This is really sequential in steps. So this is why I love going through this with Gina, because she understands these steps really well and can describe them. So one of the things, so I'm noticing for myself when going through this, and I've heard you say this so many times, it just pisses me off that I'm going through this again with you. But so the eureka for me is mastery. The eureka for me is that under pressure you go to it versus under pressure you go to something else, and that is a critical piece of learning this. And so when people say things like success is an awful teacher, is that what you're talking about here in a little bit? Because people think they got to see and it worked.
Right.
Look, it worked.
I'm done.
I learned.
They say I'm done. Oh, that was so uncomfortable. I'm so glad it's over.
Yeah.
Right. But the thing is, you have to be able to do it till you can't not do it. Now, I got that quote from a gymnast. Have you ever watched women's gymnastics? Let's take the balance beam as an example.
Yeah.
Okay. I used to be a gymnast. It's this big. It's less wide than an iPhone. Okay. And these gymnasts at the world level are doing flips and twists and front flips and back flips. And I challenge you to do a front flip, period. I challenge you to do a front flip in a straight line. And then I challenge you to do it 4 feet off the ground on a couple of inches. So you understand that they have to know that they can do that no matter which way the wind is blowing, how good the lighting is, what they've eaten for breakfast. So you have to know that you can do it. In fact, you can't not do it that way. Okay.
Is it also that you can't not do the preparation that goes into it? Because
that's part of the sequence.
That's part of the sequence, right?
Part of the sequence.
I'm thinking about it, like Kobe never stopped shooting 500 baskets a day.
Exactly.
Right? Like Steph Curry never stopped shooting 500 baskets a day. Like just because they got their contract didn't mean they stopped doing it.
No,
right?
And this is the thing that separates, the wheat from the chaff, if you will. Like people always like the 10,000 hours concept, Gladwell's 10,000 hours is amazing, because it's like you sort of look at the icon of success, whoever that might be, and you think, oh, they're so lucky. But I don't think you appreciate, like Gaga said this once when she won the Academy Award. So when she won an Academy Award, she's a singer, but when she won the Academy Award for the Stars Born, she said something in her speech like, I didn't just like land up here. I work my ass off. Now I'm paraphrasing what she said, but she basically was like, to everybody out there who work, like, keep working. I work so hard for this. It's not just like bonbons and, oh, I've gotten through point C, so I'm all good. Right. And that's the place, because as you may have noticed in the last few years, there's been some perturbing events. Perturb is a chemistry term for rattling up the beakers. And so what you will see is humans will always revert to their most dominant pattern. Okay. Now that's individually and collectively. We will behave according, especially under pressure, and under, that doesn't mean we're going to behave well. It just means we're going to, like take, for example, I'm just going to use this as an example. Early 2020, when there was tons of uncertainty, humans did what you would obviously do in that situation. help other people, make sure everyone's taken care of. No, they made a run on toilet paper.
Hoarding. Yeah.
Because that's a dominant habit that's like really, really, really deeply programmed. Okay. Yeah. Now, as my children observed at the time, like, we go to camp, you could use a leaf or a hand or your dish rag. Like, there's a million things we could do here. I really don't think on the list of things to do today, this is the only thing we can be doing. But it was just such a weird thing to observe. But it's easily explicable when you understand humans will always do their and it's sort of like commensurate with the level of stress, right? So a little stress, you'll fall back a bit. A little stress, it'll poke holes. So the stress does you a favor in that it illuminates your weaknesses or the shortcuts or whatever. But we don't see it like that. We don't go, oh yeah, this is highlighting something I need to like patch up so that I can always be on this track. No, we like bitch and complain and avoid and whatever. And then we end up back where we were. And so back to become the person that you are before you have the proof. It's like, look, if you have a vision in your mind of who you could be or something you want, or let's just simplify it. We'll say something you want. Okay. Someone you want to be. You can't have that vision if you don't already have the components. Okay. So the way I like to
and what you're saying when you say components is you already have the innate ability, whatever that innate ability is.
You have what is needed. You have what is needed.
Yeah.
But you don't have the sequence. So think of it like this. Point A, which is the comfort zone. Okay. In point A, you don't know what you don't know. So a blob baby doesn't even know it can walk. It's a blob. It can't walk. There's no knowingness. Walk doesn't exist. So it has no desire because it's not a thing. Growth, develop. Point B is when the baby wants to walk, but what triggers the desire is now it has enough development, if you will, that it knows it doesn't know how to walk, but it starts trying to because it has the components drive it to start trying to put them together. Nope. Fall down. So between B and C, it's falling down all over the place because it's trying to put the components in some sort of sequence that works. When you get to point C, so point A is you don't know what you don't know. Point B is you know what you don't know. Point C is you know. It's conscious. I know how to walk. Okay. But that doesn't mean you're good at it. Mm-hmm. Point D is you don't need to know that you know. You just do it.
Just do it. It's not even, yeah. It's
everybody who's in business has heard the 4 concepts I've just shared. So you, by virtue of the fact that you want something, means you know you don't know, which means you have what you need. You have the components. So you have what you need. So become the person that you are before you have the proof. It means trust that you have what you need. You need to find the sequence. Don't give up until you find the sequence. Hire a coach, read a book, copy someone, or for those of you who don't want any assistance, just keep going. And eventually you'll find the sequence.
Yeah.
Might take you longer, but
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
you know what I love? I love just like success as an awful teacher, stress does you a favor because it pokes holes in, and what you said was it pokes holes in your mastery. It pokes holes in your understanding of what you need to do. Is this something that you actually can do under pressure? And
right.
And it makes Gaga's speech was really profound because she also said that she never stopped working.
Exactly.
And it's that thing that champions do. The champions never stop work. It's not like they put the belt on and it's over. It's not like they raise the cup and it's over. It's the next minute they're back to work.
And they never not lose, just so we're clear. They lose all the time. I mean, did you hear that Federer gave a speech recently where he was like ripping off, I don't know the statistics exactly, but basically the bottom line, he was like, I think I won, I want to say 55% of all points that I played.
Yeah.
He's one of the greatest tennis players of all time. So what's a girl to do, right? Do you know what I mean?
It's actually even less than that. I think the number was like barely over 50%.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm just barely better. than the players I played against, just barely.
Now he won more matches than 51%. But the statistic that like these are the best in the world. And the only reason I'm bringing it up is to sort of say to people, the discipline. So there's sort of two characteristics of people. In order to get out of hell, B to C, you need to like get in touch with resources you've never used before. So they're there, but you've never pieced them together. Okay. So that's hard for people because we live in this fake culture of avoiding failure, which is insane. That's what put us together, right? The first book I wrote was called The Secret of Successful Failing.
Yeah.
And the point, that's a book about point C. It's like, look, if you want it, the only thing between you and getting it is finding that sequence. That's it. You know, before I became when I used to work in the corporate world, like big time. I was a brand manager, right? And I do have a degree in engineering. I also have a master's degree in the philosophy of science and religion. So I have both sides of the brains covered here. But when I worked in the corporate world, Andrew and I were making a move in our life, right? We were in our late 20s and ultimately ended up starting our own business, but we didn't know quite where we were going. And we were backpacking. We were in New Zealand and someone asked me what I did. Now I could have easily said, I'm a brand manager, but instead they didn't know me and I didn't know them. And there was very little risk. I just said, oh, I'm a motivational speaker. And Andrew was like, say what? Do you know what I mean? And I was like, well, if you don't say it, it can never happen. Right. And lo and behold, look what happened. Now it was at that time, and I think you'll find this particularly funny or interesting or inspiring. I made a vision board and I put it on my vision board. And this was, God, I was in my 20s. I'm not in my 20s anymore, in case you can't tell. So I made a vision board, and on my vision board, I clipped out this picture of an opera. Well, I don't know what it was, a theater, and it had 3 tiers in it. And I just clipped it out and I put it on my vision board, and I don't know where that vision board is. I forgot about it, just, blah. And then in 2014, when we were at the end of our world tour, where we'd taken the kids out for a year, and I'd done the speaking tour and the whole thing, and right? And it was well after the launch that brought us together with that GLC, right? Well after. Something came up, and I found myself the keynote speaker at this massive conference, and it was it came out of nowhere. And I stepped out onto the stage to put my stage anchors down and just to prep the environment before anybody got there. And I nearly fainted because it was the freaking image from my vision board. Okay. And I remember calling Andrew standing on the stage going, oh my God. And he's like, what? I'm like, it's the picture. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, it's the picture from my vision board. Holy shit. Right. And so I was like, okay. And I go back, and I've never been in a place like this. This was the Athens Opera House. I mean, I often have a hard time getting headset mics because people don't want to give me a Madonna mic. I don't know why. But this place had choose your mic, 50 of them, right? So I was like, I'll take this one. And so it was an unbelievable experience. And I stepped out on the stage and did my talk and blah, blah, blah. And then I got a standing ovation, which was amazing. And it was a lot of energy to hold. And then I looked down and my family was in the front row, just right there. And that's when the energy became, it's the hardest, when you have a trainer state, in my training, it was the hardest thing. It was I was holding on to right? Because there was so much energy and my family was there, which reconciled a big conflict for me because I was always away from my family. And there they were. So it was possible to do both. Right? And not or. So it was a big, big, big reckoning of that was the proof of who I was. But I had become that person. I was already acting like that person long before that moment in time. Gaga, I think you've probably seen it. I have a clip with Howard Stern where he was talking to her about some, I don't know, the interview was about some sort of drugs or whatever, but he started talking to his success. And she said, no, because he was talking about her early years. She's like, I had already felt like I had made it. This
Yeah.
is a very
Yeah. Yeah.
famous clip.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
says, I'm doing my own shows, doing my own hair, living in my apartment, $1,100 a month, doing my thing. I had already felt like I had made it. Boom. Become the person that you are before you have the proof, because the proof can't occur until you become the person.
And so I remember being in that opera house. I remember seeing you, and I remember the conversation that we had in the bus following that, and the tears in your eyes.
It was ridiculous.
So I remember all of it. And I see how that comes together. One of the things that there's so much from what you just said, but the first word of your napkin, I'm staring at it, I'm looking over at it.
Yeah.
Become.
Yeah.
It's not do, it's not try, it's not practice, it's not, it's not like going into a change room and putting on a suit. It's becoming. And becoming is a lot more than that. And it's getting in touch with the resources you've never done before, but it's really this idea of you can't not do it, because if you are that person, that's all there is. And you don't, is it right that you don't even need the freaking proof? Am I missing something?
Well, once you get to the proof, it's sort of like, I mean, you certainly enjoy it, but
it's emotional. I mean,
people,
you were there.
People will always say to me, "Oh, I can't do it until," like, you've heard the phrase, "I'll believe it when I see it."
Yeah.
It's backwards.
No.
Because it's impossible. You'll see it when you believe it.
Yeah, because it was always there.
It was always there. And so when I'm teaching a coach, say for example, I'm teaching a coach in a training, okay? Because we teach, well, I said we do the personal development, we teach it at certification standards. So if anybody's a coach, they can get certificates out of it, right? So it's like personal development certification. It's very rigorous. It's not for the faint of heart. But anyway, I will say to that coach, your job is to have the client, be what they want to be, but they can't do anything you don't believe will be possible.
Yeah.
So when I'm teaching a coach a technique, and let's say it's a technique for like letting go of a negative emotion, which is very like, holy crap, I thought I was stuck with these things for life. So the technique's very powerful. Sometimes the coaches or the participants in the room are like, I mean, I don't know, maybe it doesn't work. And I go, if you go into a coaching agreement with, I don't know, maybe it doesn't work, I can 100% guarantee it won't work.
Yeah.
Because it can't work. Milton Erickson used to say that in hypnosis. He was a very famous hypnotist, and he would say, the client can never actualize any behaviors you don't think are possible.
Yeah.
If you're a hypnotist, which I am, right? So if you don't think it's possible for you to be whatever it is you want to be, it's not possible. Like, you're right. Henry Ford said, either whether you think you can or you think you can't, either way, you'll be right.
Yeah.
So what people don't realize is everybody's doing this, Govindh. Everybody lives by what I wrote on my napkin. Everybody is becoming the person that they are before they have proof. I think what they aren't doing, to your point, is they aren't doing that intentionally. They aren't becoming intentionally. So it's happening whether they believe it or listen to this podcast or not. My point is that, like, are you taking a moment to decide who you want to be?
And with that, I'm going to put a pin in part 1. You're going to want to tune into part 2.
Yeah.
Because we're going to build on this. Thanks, Gina.
Okay.